Hello and welcome, and thank you for your interest in A Rocha UK and also for caring for God's creation. My name's Dr. Mike Perry, and amongst other things, I am a Church of England vicar based just north of Salisbury in a parish that contains both rural communities and large new housing estates. And I'm also one of the trustees for the Christian conservation group, A Rocha UK. And it's a privilege to have the opportunity to explore with you how we as church people, as Christians, care for God's creation. I want to explore with you our motivations, why I believe all Christians have a vocation to care for creation. It's a subject close to my heart, crossing the disciplines of my former profession as a research biologist in the 80s and 90s to my current one now. I will also explore with you some practical ways in which A Rocha UK can help you and your church community honour God through creation care. Now, let's take a straw poll. Who in their life has stopped to listen to, say, a robin singing in their garden? Who's been thrilled to see a hare or a deer running across a field when they've been out for a walk? And whose heart was thrilled this spring to see the first snowdrops, the first daffodils coming through? A Rocha's message starts with that understanding of being thrilled by and enjoying nature. God speaks to us through the natural world, and it's clinically proven that it does us good to enjoy the world around us. If we enjoy nature, that leads us naturally to want to nurture it. And also, when we understand that it's in danger, to conserve it and protect it. And increasingly, our love of the natural world is leading us to actions to protect it, not out of guilt, but loving concern. We're all on a journey on this, and it may feel that at the moment we're only taking small steps to care for the world around us. But small steps add up, and they also strengthen our faith as well, and allow us to look at those bigger steps that can help to care for the world around us. I'm going to explore with you some of the realities of the perils that we and the world around us face at this time. But I want to underline in all of this that I want to make you feel inspired to act rather than feel guilty. I also want to say that I've been a vicar for 20 years now, and my in-tray is very full with that, never mind the major disruption that's been COVID-19. In the day-to-day life, alongside the daily patterns of worship and pastoral care, there's the joy of church finances, the fabulous but complex world of schools and academies, all the additional work like marriage preparation and Lent courses, and most importantly, fostering healthy church communities that are growing in all ways. So I can entirely understand that a talk from some bloke from A Rocha can feel like someone coming along and saying, well, you're busy, but could you just do this one more thing as well? I don't know about you, but I get very tired of being told to do just one more thing. Now, I don't want to tell you to do anything. What I can offer is why I think caring for God's creation is important as a core part of our faith. And what I can offer is celebration for what is already happening and invitation to engage in even more. My experience is that this work enriches the life of the church. It draws in and connects us with a whole different group of people from the wider community. My experience is that as we explore this, our churches can be a blessing to the wider world. For me, the central reason why each and every churchgoer, each and every Christian has a vocation to care for creation is bound up in the central core of the Christian faith. And that core is the bond of relationship. Christ, through the cross, through his death and resurrection, allows us to be in right relationship with the heart of God in the Holy Trinity, bound into that love by grace. In turn, in the wonderful opening of the letter to the Colossians, we are told that all things are held together in Christ. What emerges is the idea of a web, a lattice of creation being held by God. And it is that I want to draw your attention to. It's a theological concept, this idea of connection that's reflected in our scientific understanding of the natural world as well. As people, we can think of ourselves as separate, apart from the world around us. Very sadly, COVID-19 has shattered that illusion, and the virus has very much told us that we are connected to the wider world around. The reality is we are part of the world around us, for good or ill. We are dependent on it, as is every other part of this glorious, intricate creation. Let's take a fundamental example. Just now, take a conscious breath in and hold it, and breathe out. In every breath that you take, most of the oxygen you breathe comes from plants from the seas around us, mostly from insignificant-looking single-celled algae. When we remember that, suddenly caring for the seas, reducing their warming, reducing our pollution of them, moves from an intellectual exercise to something that we realise that we have a stake in. We are very much connected to what might seem totally insignificant as a part of the world. But that pattern is something about God, isn't it? Of welcoming and valuing the insignificant. For a Christian as well, there is an understanding of honouring God's creation of and in itself, quite apart from how important it is for our physical well-being. It is valued by God and held together and sustained by him. As Psalm 24 puts it, the earth is the Lord's and all that's in it, the world and all those who live in it, for he has founded it on the seas and established it on the rivers. What comes over strongly in the Bible too is that the totality of all creation worships God. God, the master composer, has developed a music of the cosmos that gives joy to the God's heart through its beauty. It's like a glorious orchestra. Now, there's something amazing, isn't there, hearing Yo-Yo Ma, say, play a cello solo, or Jimi Hendrix giving an amazing guitar riff, depending on your taste in music. But something amazing happens when instruments come together in a band or an orchestra. A greater whole is developed. In the same way, the glorious complexity of God's creation gives worship to God himself. Our calling as humanity is to understand our relationship with the earth, going right back to that command in Genesis 2:15. That command of God in Hebrew is often translated into English in an agricultural way, to till and to keep the land. And that's a valid understanding, but it's a deeper understanding within the original Hebrew, because that phrase from Genesis 2:15 is identical to the one that's given as a command to the priests as they care for the temple. And that command is to serve and protect. So we are being called to serve and protect the world around us. It's this sacred role to serve and protect the good earth that all humanity is called to as a joint vocation, to serve the earth and protect it. Going back to the orchestra analogy, to draw out good music from creation, like a conductor. Music that's good all round, good for people, good for planet, and so with joyous worship for God as well. And finally, for a Christian, there's an understanding of caring for creation for the good of our neighbours. When asked in Matthew's Gospel, what's the greatest commandment? Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbour as yourself. These are the words of Jesus and need a special place in our understanding of Christian ethics. We have neighbours in our town or city or village, but we have other neighbours too. We have neighbours in time, for example. Neighbours that are children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren for generations to come. Now, saying that makes it sound far removed, but just think. I'm recording this in 2020, and the reception class of our local primary school hopefully will soon be full of children turning 5. When the climate emergency is talked of, 2050 is flagged up as one of the markers for zero carbon emissions, and the turn of the century, 2100, is another. We need to be acting right now so that by 2100, the average rise in climate temperature is 1.5 degrees, not the 3 degrees that we're currently heading for if we carry on living just as we are. 2050 and 2100, they seem a long way off, don't they? And here's the reality check. Our reception 5-year-olds today will be 35 in 2050, still young men and women, and they will be 85 in 2100. Now, actually, I would say I bet there are a few people within your church community that are in their 80s now. Perhaps you yourself are 85. Suddenly, 2050 and 2100 seem a lot closer. We have a duty to pass down to the children in our schools a world to live in that's in good shape, and ideally in better shape than before. And we need to be acting on that now. That's not a guilt trip. That's just our basic duty as decent people honouring Jesus' words. Thinking about neighbours, there's also those neighbours that live across the world. This is a picture of Matthew, who lives in the Solomon Islands, whom my wife, who works for a development agency, visited in 2018. The low-lying islands of the southern Pacific are on the front line of the climate emergency. The sea is rising, flooding the land and rising up in the soil, contaminating it with brine. Remembering that we have neighbours near and far, people like you and me who are being impacted by the effects of climate change, we are spurred to act in ways that mean that things do not get much, much worse. Again, this is not a guilt trip, it's just our basic duty as decent people and honouring of Jesus' words to love our neighbours as ourselves. We need to act now. So that's a very short introduction as to why I believe that all Christians and churches should be integrating caring for creation into their lives of faith. Let's look now at some practical steps that we can do. We need actions from the top down as well as from the grassroots. And with both of these, you, me, and everybody in our church communities have a part to play to ensure that the music of the creation plays out clearly and our neighbours are cared for. Let's think first about those big top-down actions. Many businesses have done some great things, and We want to create a culture where more and more beneficial environmental actions are possible. Actually, there are huge environmental business opportunities for green entrepreneurs to develop a thriving green future. If you are in the fortunate position of having money to invest, then consider investing in new business that is beneficial to the planet. Now, the indications are you might get a good return from that as well. And you might be saying, well, I don't have money like that to invest, but it may be that you are in a pension scheme. Think about asking how that money is invested. Government has also a part to play in those big top-down actions that need to be done to care for this world around us. And that will take lobbying from the likes of you and me. The government has set some ambitious targets to tackle climate change through the international climate agreements. And we have a role in holding them to that by clearly lobbying our MPs on environmental issues. They honestly do listen. Grassroots steps make a difference too, and we can take practical actions, our own small steps, as individuals and as church communities. And this is where A Rocha UK can help you. We can help you through our project called Wild Christian, which helps us as Christians lead better, more ethical lives that honour God. Wild Christian is an online community of people sharing ideas for personal actions. And if you go to the A Rocha UK website, you can sign up to Wild Christian's monthly email bulletin. A Rocha UK can also help you through Eco Church, and some of you, I'm sure, are familiar already with that scheme, but for those or not, I'll briefly describe it. Eco Church is an online tool that has at its heart an interactive questionnaire. Search for it online, and there you'll also find tutorials that will help you in the whole process of signing up and looking at the questions. Perhaps think about getting a group from your church together to look at it together. However you do it, through the survey, you'll get a snapshot of where you currently are. The survey looks at 5 key areas: worship and teaching, buildings, land, community and global engagement, and lifestyle. One thing to really underline is it's not pass-fail. I'm guessing you'll find some things that you're doing really well already. And it's good to celebrate those and to value them as worship in themselves. For areas where you don't score quite so highly, Eco Church will give you ideas that you can try and resources as well. The idea is that Eco Church will inspire you to do even more. And the questionnaire is an active tool that's designed for you to go back to again and again to look at how you can improve and how you can work in different areas. Now, some people hate award schemes, and if that's you, that's okay. But as a way of celebrating what you are doing, there are awards available: bronze, silver, and gold, as increasingly you do more and more in your church community. But you don't end the process with gold. If you're really serious about your common calling of the whole church, then there will always be more ways that you can care for God's creation. Thousands of churches in our country are now working with Eco Church and finding it really good. If you haven't already, have a go. I think you'll really enjoy it. A Rocha UK offer Eco Church, Wild Christian, and all the rest as free-to-use tools for any church or individual. And that's because we feel that is part of our calling as a Christian conservation organisation. If, though, you want to partner with A Rocha UK in our work as a church or as an individual and become a regular donor, we would welcome that, and details of how you can do that are on our website. God has placed us in a wonderful world, not to use it and abuse it, but to care for it and to nurture it. This isn't optional for Christians. It's part of our calling, fundamental to our faith. God bless.